When it comes to finding the ideal keyboard for your desk setup, most people have no idea what to look for, and for the most part, when looking to buy one, the price ultimately determines what you get. But the real questions are, what's the difference between a cheap and an expensive keyboard, and does spending more actually improve your gaming performance, make you more productive, or give you a better typing experience? Well, in this video, we take a look at the cheapest keyboards you could get for your desk setup, a few mid-range ones, and at the very end, the most expensive keyboard coming in at $1,424. Buckle up and let's go for the ride. Alright, before we get into the details, let's break this down for anyone who's not familiar with keyboards. There are mainly two types of keyboards, membrane and mechanical keyboards, although the majority of people use membrane keyboards, and to put it simply, these are the keyboards you'd find on most laptops. Build-wise, they are characterized by a soft layer of rubber underneath the keys, and when you press the keys, it feels like pressing on a soft pressure pad, and that action in turn triggers a circuit which tells your computer, hey, a key just got pressed, and depending on the key you press, that input is then relayed on your computer screen. In the case of this video, a good example would be the Apple Magic Keyboard and the Logitech MX Keys, but there's a catch with membrane keyboards. They only register your key press when you push the keys all the way down, and in keyboard terms, that is what is known as bottoming out. When it comes to mechanical keyboards, they take it to another level. Instead of a single membrane underneath all the keys, each individual key has its own switch, and there are so many different types of switches, but they mainly fall under these three categories: clicky, linear, and tactile switches. That aside, the most famous ones are cherry switches, which were the gold standard for so many years, quite literally holding the patent until 2004, and once that expired, a ton of new switches hit the market with brands like Getoren, Altimu, Zelios, all bringing their own twist to the keyboard space. My brief lesson aside, let's rip into the first keyboard. For just 27 Australian dollars, which is the equivalent of 18 American dollars, you get yourself a 60% mechanical keyboard, and on first impressions, it's quite heavy and well built, even though it's mainly made out of plastic. In terms of design, it's not that striking, and the only thing that would make it pop are the RGB lights underneath the keys. As for the layout, as mentioned a little earlier, it's a 60% keyboard which comes with 68 keys, and compared to the other keyboards you'll see in this video, it's super compact. Moving on to the switches, it comes with blue clicky switches, so for those of you who like that clicking sound while tapping at your desk, you'll be in for a good ride with this one. When it comes to connectivity, it only does so through a wired connection, and you can do so via the USB A to C cable. As for the typing experience, again, like mentioned a little earlier, this would suit those who like the clicky sound while typing, although I wouldn't recommend this for those working in office spaces with multiple people, as your colleagues might find them annoying. Speaking of annoying, another thing that you might find annoying is this keyboard doesn't come with a power button, and that means once you unplug it, it goes off. When it comes to compatibility, it works with both Mac and Windows, although for the Mac lovers out there, you'll have to get the Option and Command keycaps to swap with Windows and Alt. That aside, it's actually not a bad keyboard, and I'd give it a rating of 5 out of 10. Bumping up the price point with a few extra dollars, you get this membrane keyboard which comes with an extra goodie in the form of a mouse, but since we are covering keyboards, we'll leave the mouse for another day. Design-wise, it's a full layout keyboard with 104 keys and would suit someone who likes pastel colors in their desk setup. In saying that, it also comes in other color options, so if you like something subtle and simple, you could always go for black and white with a bit of grey. Build-wise, the chassis is predominantly made out of plastic, and honestly speaking, it makes it look like a toy. Ergonomically, it comes with kickstands that tilt it to a comfortable angle for you when typing, and speaking of typing, even though the keys might look mechanical, when you pull off the keycaps, there's a rubber membrane underneath. In terms of feedback, because of the key travel and hollowness of the keycap chassis, you get a somewhat talky sound, which is satisfying to some of the keyboard enthusiasts. When it comes to connectivity, it connects to your computer using a 2.4 GHz dongle, and as for power, a single AA battery could last you for ages. To put that into context, I haven't changed the battery since buying it back in April. Comparing it to the first mechanical keyboard, I'd give the first one an edge when it comes to build quality, but the fact that it must be plugged in to be used, this one takes the nod when it comes to functionality. Moving along, for an extra 24 Australian dollars on top of the $70 you spent on the pastel membrane keyboard, you get this retro typewriter mechanical keyboard, and tell you what, straight from the get-go, even without diving too deep, the build quality looks and feels a lot better. In terms of materials, the chassis is a combination of aluminum and plastic put together to create a decent looking keyboard that has exposed keyboard switches which anchor the oval and rounded keycaps that have a slight divot to them, allowing your fingers to fit in perfectly when you're typing. When it comes to setup and connection, you can connect it wirelessly or via Bluetooth, and in terms of compatibility, it's compatible with both Windows and Mac, and by simply toggling this switch to either Windows or Mac, the keyboard adjusts its layout to suit the ecosystem you set it to. If you thought that was it, it's got a bit more up its sleeve, more so if you own an iPad. By simply connecting it to your iPad via Bluetooth, then placing it on the holder at the front, you can create a makeshift laptop with a mechanical keyboard and it will work seamlessly without any troubles. Moving along, as mentioned in the intro, in this video you get to find out if an increase in price really translates to better performance. So when you add an extra $38 to the price of the retro typewriter keyboard, you get the low-free flow light, and on first impressions it looks so premium, and trust me, it would be so hard for anyone to believe it just costs 132 Australian dollars. For those who are new to the mechanical keyboard world, this is a budget-friendly version of the premium flow model, also from Lofree, but it still maintains a smooth typing experience. Design-wise, the chassis is predominantly made out of plastic, and when it comes to the layout, it has 84 keys as well as an aluminum volume rocker, which adds an interesting design element. Speaking of the keys, underneath them are Spectre switches, which came about as a result of a collab between Lofree and Kyle, and together with the low-profile gasket-mounted keycaps, they offer an ultra-smooth and nearly silent typing experience, which you'll hear people in the keyboard world referring to as creamy. In terms of ergonomics, it also comes with kickstands just like the two keyboards we've spoke about, but it separates itself from them when it comes to connectivity, as it can connect to your computer via Bluetooth, the 2.4 GHz dongle, or wired. When it comes to compatibility, you can use it across all the ecosystems you have at your desk, and the best part is you'll be doing so for a while because of the 100 hours of battery life you get after a full charge. Moving along the same line of thought, for an extra dollar you get the Apple Magic Keyboard coming in at 139 Australian dollars. Now, I know this keyboard cops a lot of slack, and if you'd ask me, my biggest gripe would be the fact that there is still no Magic Keyboard with a USB-C to C cable. Anyway, that aside, the keys sit on a chassis made entirely out of aluminum, and for a low-profile membrane keyboard, the keys have an oddly satisfying travel. As for connectivity, you can connect it to your Mac using the Lightning cable or Bluetooth. Then, when it comes to Windows, you can do so via Bluetooth. Design-wise, it's clean and minimal on its own, but when you slide it into the Grommet keyboard tray, then put a wrist rest underneath, it looks even better. When it comes to battery life, they are absolute tank, and for context, I haven't charged it since March. Speaking of tanks when it comes to battery life, the Logitech MX Keys S is also another one, but there's a catch. You'll have to ensure the backlight is turned off to experience that longevity. Build-wise, majority of the chassis is made from aluminum, which makes it look so premium, and the plastic parts come from recycled plastic. Putting all this together gives you some heft, even though majority of the chassis is quite slim with a slight elevation, which is good for ergonomics. Going into detail, even though it's a membrane keyboard, its keys have a slight travel, which give it an oddly satisfying feeling when typing at your desk. When it comes to connecting to your computer, you could either do so via Bluetooth or the Logibolt USB receiver, and this is where it gets really interesting. You can connect up to 3 computers, and depending on your preference, by simply tapping on 1, 2 or 3, you can switch to the computer of your choice. Another thing I like about it is how you can remap the keys on the Logi Option Plus software. Moving on to the most expensive keyboard you could get for your desk setup, you've got this steampunk keyboard which would set you back a whopping 1,494 Australian dollars. Now, let's see if it's really worth the price. Design-wise, it's an absolute marvel to look at, predominantly made with a walnut-stained wood chassis, and if you'd ask me, it would fit perfectly in a walnut-themed desk setup like this one. Going into detail, it comes with additional accessories, starting with this riveted cylinder on the left, which you can use to store your pens, pencils, and other miscellaneous items. In the middle, there's this crank that you can use to turn on the dimmable lights, which helps set the perfect ambience, especially when working at night. At the very end, you've got this rustic clock that acts as an additional timepiece with a bit of that retro element. As for the keycaps, they are rounded and have a brass outer ring and a slight divot to them, which would perfectly accommodate the shape of your fingers. Speaking of keycaps, these ones have the Altemu blue switches sitting underneath them, and if you ask me, that's heaven for those who like that clicky sound when typing. Here's the sound test. When it comes to connectivity, it connects to both Mac and Windows, but only through wired connection. Well, now that the comparison between the cheapest and most expensive keyboard is done, I'm sure the question most of you want answered is, does price equate to performance and overall satisfaction? Well, in case you missed it, the higher up we went, the more the keyboards kept getting better, but that's not always the case. In my opinion, the moment you get to a price point of $300 and above, you stop paying for performance but intangibles like novelty and how niche the keyboard is. Using this steampunk keyboard, I'll try and explain why the expensive keyboards cost as much as they do. Now, to put it into perspective, when it comes to the number of people who are interested in niche keyboards like this antique-looking neo-Victorian mechanical keyboard, many would assume it would be on the lower side, and rightly so. For the few who happen to be in that niche category of people, this will explain why you pay those insanely high prices. Again, these are niche products, and the business strategy of selling niche products that don't move a whole lot of inventory is usually to sell them at a higher price to help cover the cost of production. Very rarely does the selling price go hand in hand with the cost of production or even materials. And this basically means one sale is usually pricey enough to help cover the low sale numbers. If you'd ask me, I wouldn't recommend spending such an amount on a keyboard unless you review tech. In conclusion, if you like mechanical keyboards, the low free flow light would give you the most bang for your buck, and for those who prefer membrane keyboards, you can't go wrong with the Logitech MX Keys. Well, there you have it, peeps. I hope you enjoyed and found this video helpful, and as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and click the notification bell to get notified whenever I post a new video. If you go to this point of the video, I'm sure you like desk setup accessories, and here's another video with some really good ones that you'll definitely like. Until then, people of the internet, I'm signing out. See you on the next one.